Um, all right, yeah, so you guys got some questions? Looking at denting. So the main topic we'll be looking at here is this type of effect. Um, Doing constraints, stuff like that, to make sure that certain things stay attached to the ring, and then certain things can freely be deformed or move around, get floppy with it. So that's the main thing. I saw some people with some questions and stuff in here. We could get through a few of them. Watching all the YouTube vids. Yeah, I'm getting back on the stream train, hopefully. Been trying to get more and more regular streams. Siegel Rush, good to see you again. All right. So I saw Noah X. Um, where did it go? They were asking about this type of bottle effect. This is a daytime stream. If you're in the UK, England, uh, Asia is a nighttime stream maybe. But for me, it's a early morning stream. Good to see everyone. So yeah, with this type of thing, there's definitely a lot of stuff going on with maybe some particles and stuff like this, but we could go over it a little bit and just see how far we can get. Maybe spend 5 or 10 minutes on it, and then we'll get into the main topic today, which is going to be this type of thing. If you're looking for a link, you put that in the chat. And I think we should be able to get through a few of these questions. For example, custom curve forces or custom forces. I think for sure there's some custom forces going on with this thing. So we'll just go into it quickly. We'll make a geometry container. And we'll just start with a line. You could use this, or I'm going to switch it and instead just use a curve. So the curve is nice. You go into these orthographic, like the front view. And then if you just go over here to the show handle, this like gnomon, the axis or whatever it's called, then you can, kind of like you're using Adobe Illustrator or something like that, you can freely create these points and stuff like that. So what I'm doing is just drawing like the profile of a bottle or something close to it. Get a 2 liter of Mountain Dew. Boom. And then if we want to make sure to like snap or align stuff, usually I use nodes to do that. We just do match size. Even though this says size, you can use this to align things as well. So by default, it will move the center of the bounding box to the origin. But instead, you can use minimum. So that will align the minimum corner of the bounding box. Noah XYZ, thank you for the subscription. Twitch Prime. So yeah, if anyone's here and they didn't know, you can link your Amazon Prime subscription with Twitch, because Jeff Bezos owns everything. And you can use that to subscribe at no cost to yourself, which is a good way to support the streamer. So we use minimum in X and minimum in Y. And what that does is just the bottom of the bounding box will align it. So that will let us use a revolve more easily. Boom. And then we have our somewhat simple, whoops, just get into the perspective. We have somewhat of some kind of bottle or something like that. Good parameters for cloth simulations? Pray L. I think that on the side effects website, it's kind of hidden away, but they do have this content library section. And here they have a fabric samples with a scene file, I believe. Download right here. So these should give you, for wind and gravity, I think we're just using standard settings like negative 9.8 meters per second. So the Houdini viewport, each unit is like a meter, and just negative 9.8 for the standard should be good. And then wind and other forces, like it's kind of a trial and error. You kind of have to experiment and see what happens. Random render, thank you for the 4 months. Let's go. Strider boy, how you doing? All right, so this is our bottle. If we want to do some other things, you can use like a resample. Sometimes I'll use this if you want to do some interpolation, reduce the edge length, maybe go over to subdivision. So we're going from like this rigid shape to that. Another thing that I'll do sometimes is if you do a resample above this. So what we're going to do is use a resample here, maybe do maximum segments by polygon edge. So this will insert some points, and then when we do this other resample, now this is acting more like a kind of like a chamfer, or like just rounding the edges but preserving the main segments. Free knowledge. JonasJ.com, thank you for the 6 months. Tier 2. Let's go. Hard Gorilla, how you doing? All right, so we'll try to gotta bang through this more quickly. So this is our bottle, pretty simple. I think with this revolve, you can set divisions if you want more or less resolution. With cloth, I generally, or with vellum, I generally would want these quads to be like equal, to be more like boxes or squares. So just keep going here, maybe boom, 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 boom. 130. Might be too slow, it might not be, but we'll see what's going on. Yeah, it's good to be back. I'm trying to get more into the routine, hopefully establish a schedule soon. But yeah, until then, I'm just trying to sneak some streams in before work. So we can just do Vellum configure cloth and put that in. And then this is initializing your cloth parameters and everything like that. And then the Vellum solver, for most cases, you can use this SOP level solver here. Geoff Burns 3D, oh my God. Thank you for the 10 tier 1 gift subs. Let's go. The hell is going on? All right, so should be good. I appreciate it. Hopefully everyone in the community is enjoying their new gift subs. So yeah, then with these gift subs, with the subscriptions in general, I am working on some bonus content for that. There's like this vellum flower that's blooming, or like a rose or something like that. I'm still dialing in the settings, like the render settings and lighting and stuff like that with it. But yeah, subscribers and Patreon members get access to this kind of like mini tutorials. I'm still working on the final like delivery and stuff like that. But yeah, eventually it will be you'll be enjoying it. Okay, so we have a simple simulation. If we want to, we can add a ground plane. We already have gravity, so we can just go ahead and play it, and you see kind of what happens. So this bottle is just like a paper bottle or something like that. Usually I'll turn this clock real-time toggle on in the bottom right, just to make sure that it's not like playing more faster or slower than 24 frames a second. Okay. The translucency. Thank you. Yeah, I'm still working on it. I've been experimenting with some different maps as well and stuff like that. If you go to textures.com, they have some really good where did my RV go? I don't know what application it's going to open with. So yeah, I was looking at some different flower maps as well as trying to make my own. But yeah, these like veins, this like vein structure going on inside of the flower petals is pretty hard to nail or dial in. That's why I've been spending a lot of time on now, is like render settings and stuff like that. All right. So we want this to be a little bit more rigid or something like that. Usually I go down to the bend stiffness. You go up to like 100, maybe even higher. Go all the way up. Still too slow. Might need more constraint iterations. Is it possible to reverse engineer an L system from a 3D object? So we're getting like thicker folds now. I don't know how easy it is to reverse engineer an L system. Like if you're talking about extracting the actual syntax, like this type of language is pretty difficult. You could reverse engineer it yourself, like with trial and error, but to procedurally derive the L system, you could look it up. I would recommend that to be your best solution. If you get this, there's a free PDF that's like algorithmic botany. You just Google it, you go to this website here, and then they will provide it for free, I believe, in the publications section. This one, I believe. Graphical modeling using L systems. So I think in this book, they kind of talk about, they look at some different types of species and stuff like that, and they'll explain the language behind it. So this is a free resource that's pretty good. Yeah, or also if you use plugins like Grow Infinite, I think there was like an Xfrog one. There's some pretty cool ones. And then there's also, of course, SpeedTree. This one is like supposed to be the most artist friendly or whatever. There's a lot of presets and stuff like that. Or you can, of course, use Houdini and go wild with it. Yeah, sometimes you don't need to specifically know logarithms. You can also just use like, you go crazy enough with the copy stop, you can get some good results as well. And the L system, if you guys weren't aware, it does have presets. If you click on the gear, you see there's like gnarly tree, bush, branch. This one has like animation put into it. So there is presets built in to get you started with the L system. I haven't been using it for my flower. So the flower stuff, it's pretty much all based off of the Philiotaxis Vex code. If you go to the Patreon, that is a free post that I had made. Where did it go? Okay. Yeah, there's a labs tree generator as well if you get the labs plugin. But I'm basically using this to orient and position the petals of the rose or of the flower. So if we go back to that video, I unfortunately only have this perspective rendered. But if you look at it from above, you'll see a similar kind of spiral or something like that. So it's just one leaf geometry, and then just copied, rotated, oriented, and things like that. And yeah, I've been going through, so even using this for other setups as well. So like all kinds of plants, I think it's a pretty flexible thing. This is pretty cool. I did it with this aloe vera plant to set up the spiral arrangement of that as well. All right. Sorry, got sidetracked. Let's get back to the cloth. Things are, something froze on my end. Steve GH, how's it going? The tree generator, I haven't checked. I might need to reboot. I don't know what's happened. All right, let me see. Oof. Maybe it's just the mouse. All right, I'm gonna try maybe plugging the mouse back in. Okay, sorry about that. Yeah, there's Grow Infinite. Isn't that the plugin on Gumroad, I think? Yeah, that's KXK Studios. Their talks are pretty cool. There's some on YouTube. There's some on the Side Effects Hive. All right. So yeah, if you want to make this thicker or like stiffer, I think reduce the density, increase stiffness, and I think also simulating stiffer things, you might need more constraint iterations. This is like a thicker cloth. If you want it to stand up by itself, like I'm not going to go into that direction because we're just looking at this, going to eventually get closer to like that type of thing. But there is the strut soft body. So if you want it to actually like stand up by itself, this would be a separate setup you could do. And then that would actually have like volume and bounce around and stuff like that. So we'll get back to like a softer cloth. The rose, yes. So that I'm hoping to release that. It'll be some subscriber, a gem, a nice example setup. Hopefully in the next week or so. I just want to iron out. I don't want to release like a sloppy method of doing things. So I spend a lot of time like doing trial and error to figure out the best approach to that type of stuff. Okay, so just go back. We probably don't need this many iterations. We'll just go back to the default. Things will be faster. And then I'm also going to turn off gravity. So if you want to go to just keep our eye on this example. Oof, I missed it. All right, just put this on top. Get a little thing like that. Maybe. Whoop. All right. Just gonna put that up. All right. Typical nice Spotify. I turned the music off for a little bit. There's a few reasons. Some of it is due to licensing and getting the parts of the VOD like yeeted or muted. Another reason is some people found it distracting, or if you don't mix it right, like at the time of recording, it's my voice is harder to hear or stuff like that. And some people will listen to this stuff at like 2 times or 3 times speed, or they want their own music or something like that. Maybe we'll bring it back eventually. We're just setting up a spiral force now. So if you use pop access force, you can use these pop nodes with all cloth, any point-based DOP simulation. And this Vellum solver, you just double click and you can add any forces or controls inside of it. So take a look at the orbit speed here. And then that should, did I turn off gravity? I didn't. Okay. Turn off gravity. And we should see this orbit. Let me try. Sometimes they come up on under other should be able to do the orbit. Let's take a look at this. Velocities. Vegan Nuts, thank you for the 11 months. Let's go. I appreciate it. So it looks like we're spinning now. I just expanded the radius and the height a little bit. We could go even higher. So this is eventually like too much force, too many instabilities, and it's kind of blowing up. We'll just go to 15. We're kind of spinning stuff around like that. And then the other thing that it looks like they're happening is like some slicing and stuff like that. So if we just, before we turn this into a cloth, we'll make some grid go on the other axis. How did you get your view like that? It's just, this is like a Chrome window, a browser, and then the rest of it is you can just make panes and stuff yourself. It's a longer process. I'm not going to go through it all, but it just comes down to customizing things with like split pane, and then you can save it up here in this section. So I just saved it with my initials. And if you press the P button over the network, then that's how you get this little nice like parameter thing that you can move around. Is pretty nice. All right, so you have the grid. Do a copy and transform. We'll just make a few copies. The P, yeah, I always forget about that shortcut. The P for parameters, that's how I remember it. It's a pretty nice trick to have in there. We'll just start with maybe this. And then if we do the Boolean shatter, this will let us cut, pre-slice. We have these seams, slices happening that you can see in the wireframe. All right. So then it's kind of falling apart like that. And then this is kind of a weird thing. I don't know how much you would want to balance it or whatever, but if you do like lift or suction, generally you need to balance this orbital speed with some suction to like pull things back in. So that would be like one way I would start with experimenting this type of stuff. Next month you're celebrating. It's going to be the 1 year for Vegan Nuts. You're going to bring out the champagne. So the 1 year is the champagne room tier. All right. So that's definitely one way you can approach this type of effect. I think that they're masking these forces a little bit as well. So like the axis force or the tornado force is getting ramped in after a certain time. So you can animate and you can use Vexpressions to dial that stuff in as well. And another thing you could experiment with is like this bend stuff here. If you look at the bend node, there is a twist setting. So by default, this is the wrong axis. What attribute do you think is being used for the texture shifting, I think that the mesh is actually being moved around in here, if that makes sense. They could be, I think that they're using, like they have UVs. You could twist the UVs yourself as well. So if we take a look at this twist, we want to switch the axis, and you can see now this is twisted. So if you want to actually deform stuff, you can do it this way. And you could do it, I don't know if we want to do it by attribute. Let me think. Taper. So even using a bit of this stuff without a cloth simulation, like maybe before the simulation, you can do that kind of deformation, like a hand animation. Whoops. And distort stuff that way. So hopefully this is giving you some ideas. I don't want to spend too much. I've already spent a bit more time than I planned on this. This is the pre-game example. But whoops, just do a new folder. This is the 18th. Oops. All right. We call this plastic bottle vellum warp. All right. Do you get it? Or you can use these shelf tools, the scripts and macros and stuff if you want to automatically, like, you can grab that from the server that way. Or if you want to just use this link, you can download the example there. So yeah, and then the texture projection stuff, hopefully that makes some sense. Glass particles, they could be particles or RBD, I would say. But I think it's definitely a secondary simulation. So that would be another step. Like down here, you would set up maybe from high velocity areas or edges once things disconnect, split. So like here, if you looked at the edges and when they disconnected, maybe you want more damping of the velocity, calm things down. Once those things like separated, then you could emit particles from those edges. This is definitely like, this person probably spent several weeks doing R&D and stuff like that for this setup. So I'm definitely not doing it justice in this time, but hopefully it gives you some ideas. So that you could do like some things with a SOP solver or stuff like that and find out when these things separate. Got a problem with the Boolean? Sometimes if you don't feed very proper geometry to the Boolean, it will give you errors or problems. If I tried to, whoops, you'd see it here when I was trying to rotate it like off axis. You get some artifacts. Crossed boundary unshared edges in a solid. That generally just means you have some bad topology somewhere, or some bad overlaps. So I think I'm probably, I'm getting the same errors here. So like if you have these grids here that are crossing at like weird, pretty gnarly edges and stuff, the Boolean, it tries to resolve these self-intersections. One thing I should have said earlier is you probably want to switch this to surface for both the inputs. So it looks like it fixed it here in that case. That's a big thing that you have to be careful about with whether it's like an indicator ahead of time to say whether this is a closed shape. All right, so that fixed it, hopefully. So yeah, now if you wanted to do funkier patterns and stuff like that, you can do stuff that way, and it's pretty cool. There's also some stuff you can do with the weld points. A while ago, I did a kind of balloon popping simulation with Vellum, and I did. I think if you search like on YouTube, it's definitely on my channel somewhere there. But you could get some like glue or some welding between the edges if you take the time to set that up as well. We'll do just one more update for the file if you wanted to get the latest, and then just do a new scene here, and we're going to move on. Do the big, the main course now. So we're talking about this type of setup. I believe in the questions channel, Mosawi asked about this type of setup, and Paul, if you guys follow Paul on Twitter or Instagram, he's a very famous gentleman on there. He does tons of like daily node tips and tricks and stuff like that. That's really cool. Whatever social media, maybe he even puts them on TikTok. I don't know. I don't have a TikTok. I get lost every time I try to use it. But he does just really good like 10-second, 20-second little videos like explaining parameters or things like that. So that's where the idea to build this up came from. I don't know the Houdini very well yet. Could you tell me how you can transfer the noise map from Houdini to another 3D software, since I render in Cinema 4D? That's a pretty big topic that's somewhat complicated. But if you look up bake texture inside of Houdini, that's like the easiest way, or I guess the most like recommended way from the side effects people. My dog. Thank you for subscribing. The tier 1. Let's go. So this would basically, whatever you're making inside of Houdini, they try to show you how you can generate like maps, whether it's going to a game engine or anything like that. That's one way to do it. If you're talking about just a more simple way, we'll just do this as we're starting the example. So here we have the torus. We're going to start building this guy, put it on the Z axis. If another way that's sometimes easier to bring geometry or noise patterns into other software, it's not as robust. But if we do here attribute noise, can do this to color. We'll just do this as like a clown color or whatever like that. So Houdini likes to store the color or noises and things like that it generates as a point attribute. But if you promote it to a vertex attribute, just do CD to vertex. Then if you use the Alembic exporter, ROP Alembic output, under geometry, as long as you have this as a vertex attribute, then the Alembic exporter will recognize this. So I could try putting this in my temporary directory. I don't know what I have installed here. I have some other 3D applications. I used to have Blender installed, but I don't think I do anymore. But if you do it this way, boom, this information should be readable in other 3D software packages. So I've worked with other software packages at studios and stuff before. People bring this into Maya, and like in your V-Ray shader, you can get like the vertex color attribute. So yeah, this is the simpler method to export noises or colors, but you're limited by the mesh resolution. So like if you want a really detailed high frequency noise pattern, you probably want to use the texture baking link that I put up here. But if it's just a simple noise or like a mask or something, even if this is animated, you can export that, which is pretty cool. Moso oui. Yeah, I'm happy to talk about this. It seemed like a pretty cool thing to do. All right. So we have a ring we're going to start out with. We can adjust this inner radius or something like that. Then we'll just build these fins out with a, I don't know what you want to call them. This is kind of like a grill. It's almost like a heat sink or like a computer or something. I'm just going to start with a tube to build those. So you might think circle, but a little trick with Houdini, at least, is if you start with a tube, you go to polygon, you go to height, make that 0, and then just make one of the radii 0. Now you have a circle, but if you increase rows, then you can start to have like a nice topology with it, if you see what I mean. So if you start with a circle, the circle sop, even if you go to polygon, there's no way to like build these interior edges or anything like that. So this is a little bit nicer. I'm actually going to increase this just so we have a spacing, like a inner circle or whatever. So yeah, this is nicer topology. For example, if you subdivide it, you'll still have those. If we subdivide this, things can get like a little gnarly over time. It's like an N. Avoid using these like N-gons if you can. Even if you try to triangulate, things get a little messy. All right. And then I'm going to actually now use the circle. And then this is going to be our framework to copy these around in. So we have the torus, this circle here, go into wireframe. This is going to be the curve that we will propagate our circles on. So we'll go in here, go to polygon, go up with the divisions, and we'll just try to stay organized. I was using these null nodes. So we'll call this cloth circle. This will be, what do we want to call this? Central path. If you hold Alt and drag on these, and you just get the quick copy like I did there. Then this will be main torus. All right. So you do orient along curve, and then this quickly, like the icon shows, you build the direction flowing along the curve. Very similar to that. If you want to visualize this, you can click there, display normals. So along the tangents, the direction that the curve is traveling, this will assign normals like that. And then if we do copy to points, then we can place these. Ooh, look at that. We made some Islamic, it's like the very nice geometry, the sacred geometry. So right now this is this is happening because I've copied these in the wrong, they're like oriented along the wrong direction, if that makes sense. So this copy to points node, when you have a local frame like this, it wants to place things along the z axis. Down here is like the up direction. So if I just transform here, just want to rotate probably 90 degrees along the x-axis. So now this should be proper, like it's facing in the z direction here. 4 nodes. It's, yeah, I mean, you could get, this is another side tangent, but you get lost doing sacred geometry experiments with Houdini. So you have this kind of thing happening. I don't know what you want to do, but you do like Boolean. I might have borked it. Let's try this. Intersection. Does it work? Let's just do the Boolean. So there's a way to, I'm just trying to like extract the overlaps. I think if you do seam. Oof. If you want to get rid of the guides, sometimes I just put a null below it. So now we've made like a wireframe from that. So yeah, you could, this is a different thing. You could get lost with this. We'll just put this over here. Okay. So we oriented everything properly. If we want to merge stuff just for visualization purposes, can do that. And then it looks like we do have some alignment errors or issues. So we want this inner radii to be smaller, and then maybe the outer radii. We're kind of closer to that now. We'll do a quick file save here. This will be our cloth ring. So if you guys are getting started, you would pick that up if you want to follow along. All right. So I think we're close to ready if we want to start simulating stuff. Can do configure cloth. I'm just going to start with these things. Let's get a sphere moving around so we can start to play around with collisions. So I'm going to do a funny example here. Sometimes what I do to keep my network from getting too messy, I'll use these object merges. So these let you fetch or pull in other parts of your network, like that. Sometimes I'll do it so instead of like, you can see now I'm crisscrossing all over the place. But if I just fetch this, it's a little cleaner. And if you do view dependency links, show for selected nodes, then whenever you click on a thing with a reference like that, you'll see it just when you're clicking on it though. You can also do like show for all nodes. Things will get a little bit more confusing. Sometimes I'll work this way just to keep things a little bit cleaner. So we can sweep along the curve that's already like existing. Instead of doing second input, we could do like the round tube. Maybe points. Just one point. So we have this path happening. And then we can do even a rotation. Like 1, 2, 6, 7 twists. So now we have this interesting spiral happening. If you want to connect these points, you can just do the add. And under polygons by group, and you could do closed. And then these are all connected. And then if we just do ends, this doesn't particularly matter, but I don't think it matters, but if you do ends, unroll with shared points, then you'll open the polygon or unveil the face. Hi Won Woo, how's it going? So there's different things you can do here, but it's just one thing, so I'm just creating the path. So we'll have a more interesting path for the ball to travel along. If you want an easy way for like a point to move along a curve, you can use this carve, and instead of using this stuff up here, if you just do extract, extract, I think this is what I wanted. Okay, so yeah, this is just extracting one point wherever this parameter is set. So 0 to 1 along the length of the curve. If we just do $T, ooh, might be a little too fast. We have this thing flying along the curve. So $T just is the current time of your scene, time in seconds corresponding to the animation. So you could divide that like by 4. This would be 25% the time or the speed. And when it exceeds 1, you can see it's just stopping. So if you want it to keep looping around, you can just use this wrap function. Wrap. Wraps a value between a minimum and a maximum. So this will cycle the output. And then the next two numbers is what you want it to cycle between. So if you do 0 and 1 like that, I'm just going to shift click. Then you can see we've gotten a sawtooth repeating cycle. So now when I play it, it will keep repeating. Instead of going above 1, it will just restart again at 0. So we get a endless perpetual motion. And then you can just copy to points a sphere. So we're just essentially parenting this ball to the points. This is a extra or bonus or whatever. If you want the sphere to follow or orient itself along the curve, you can just reuse this orient along curve. So now you can see it's twisting around to follow it. So that would just be like if we had, whoops. If we do a tube, use this, you can make a pyramid or a cone. Yeah, I think we want this along a different axis. Just need to go the other way. If you have like a drill or something like that, this orient along curve will make it follow the path. So hopefully that's a nice thing if you're looking to do that. All right. So with Vellum, this third input here, this is usually the collision geometry. If you want to work cleanly, you can do it at the start. And I'm also going to go to my sphere and just switch this to polygonal geometry. So this primitive here, this is kind of like a particle, or it's like a special data type that isn't a mesh. So with Vellum, it wants everything to be like mesh or faces or triangles or quads or whatever. So that's why we'll switch it to that. And then we can probably just do a Vellum solver and just connect everything up. So this is passing through the constraint like that. Or I'm sorry, the collision. Both the collision and the constraint get passed through. You can see it all up there. And I'm definitely going to turn off gravity for this. Doesn't look like gravity happening here. And I think we can just play it and see what happens. All right. So we have some successes and some failures. Let's finesse the display of this a little bit as well. I'm just going to click on this so that our tube is getting displayed, and see what we're working with. Pretty interesting. Nearly there, but not yet. Clean things up a little bit. And just going to rearrange stuff over here. Just leave that up there. And do another version. Sometimes if you're working, every time you reach like a checkpoint, it's good to save a version. Yeah, I'll go into the sweep node in a second, Mr. Panders, or Mrs. Panders. So the checkpoints is nice, like whenever I want to recreate something from a reference, just setting like little checkpoints or goals, it's an easier way to work on something without getting stuck. So like if I was making this as a complete beginner, I would say like, well, let's break this down. One thing we need is a sphere moving in a circle around something. Like that's one step. That's one kind of like landmark or checkpoint. And then every time you reach one of these checkpoints, if you just version up and save, is a good way to work if you're just starting out. So with this sweep node, to get the coil like that, what I did is instead of the shape from the second input, I've just switched to the round tube. And then instead of like quadrilaterals, I've switched this to just output the points. And then instead of like a ring or divisions, I've just set it to like one division. So this is like the outermost point of the ring, if that makes sense. And then you can twist it around and coil it or change the radii, the radius. So that's one thing that I was actually going to change as well. So when we go in to run our next simulation, so let's shift click here, we'll get the path, and then shift control click here, and we'll visualize. Now you can see more things. So that's pretty cool. So now we won't have that. Originally the radius was too small where it was like going inside of that inner tube. We could also, you see we have these like bigger kinks. If you just resample, you could do it above or below. You can resample to get a smoother path. And then the other thing is if you have your collision starting or spawning within already inside of the geometry, then it will be permanently stuck inside of it. So those things that it starts like penetrating with, it will always try to bring those along with it. The easiest way for that here is I'm just going to do some hand animation to fix that. So let's go to our sweep with this radius here. If we go up to like 7, 2, I'm gonna Alt click there to set a keyframe. And then could go in a few frames, maybe like 15 frames. We'll reduce the radii, the radius, 0.5. So that fixes the problem of things initially like penetrating. That's one thing we want to do. Another thing we want to do is now stick the inside of these cloths or spheres or circles, I'm sorry, to the tube. So we can do that hopefully pretty easily. I think, let's go back up here to our original circle or tube. And there's a few ways we can do this. I'm trying to think of the most procedural approach. You can do like a group. If you do like group by edges, unshared edges, go into points. You can see this is getting both the borders or the perimeters. So unshared edges is a good way to group anything that's like a border of your mesh. So that could be useful. So let's see. So another thing we have that might be useful is we're going to know the inner radius size, always like this. So let's just call this. This is going to be our pin group. So if I do another group, set this to points, we'll also call this pin. And the merge method, instead of replacing or like blowing away the existing group, what we can do is switch this to intersect with existing. And then I'm going to go into the bounding regions. So right now, intersect means it can only like take away from the existing group. So if I reduce this size, because we're intersecting, we're not going to add points that weren't in the group already. It will only, the group will only keep things that are both already existing and inside of this new group bounding box. Hopefully that clears it up. It's a little confusing to think about for the first time. So you can use this radii here and paste the relative references. And then because this is like radii versus, it's like radius versus diameter, that kind of thing, I think we can just multiply it by 2. And that would like perfectly line up with the edges there. I'm just going to do like 2.5, so we have a little bit of extra padding. And I think we can copy this parameter and link it up like that. So this is a somewhat procedural way to just get that inner ring. There might be better or other ways that you can use as well, but for right now, we'll go with it. Yeah, you could do a vex or group syntax. That's one way to do it. There's a few different ways. You can also do it. Do one more way if you're feeling adventurous. So you could do a sphere, a circle here, and I'm just going to copy the radii, inner radii, to the uniform scale here, and we'll put it on the same axis. And then switch this to polygon. And we're going to want these divisions to be the same as columns, like that. So if we did change, it would match. And then I think if we did a group here, could do it to points. We could call this pin. You can do group transfer. So pretty cool. This is like attribute transfer, but it works with groups. And under point groups, do pin. I think if we do the 9 key, it should show up. Maybe I need to be in like the points mode. Okay. So by default, everything's getting added to that group. You mess around with this distance threshold. Should be getting it, right? Sometimes this gets a little funky. You share your color UI scheme file. If you just search, just type in oddforce slate, and you'll get this is where I got the UI from. You can download it as just this zip file here. So I think with my grouping here, what I should be doing is first initializing this input pin and setting it to empty. Let's see if that works. Should be working. All right, I'm gonna move on. We give up on that for right now. So we got them. There's other ways as well. Steve's Vex code is very handy. This will work as well. Put it right there. And now when we go to our Vellum, let's get this back to where we were. We can do constraints like this. If you just plop it in, then all the wires get attached. So with this, we want to use, I believe, a pin to target constraint. And we should be able to pull in these groups automatically, like that. So now we're just creating constraints on that inside ring. And we can just permanently pin them. We don't need to move them around or anything like that. And it looks like we're closer. We have some issues again, obviously, but we reached another checkpoint of figuring out a step. So we'll add that. Version 3. You want to get caught up? There it is. Do you have a 4K monitor? I don't know if it's all the way to 4K. What is the Linux command to see it? It's like some X. Maybe if I just do my neo fetch, it will say. 3840? So I have a few monitors I'm using, but yeah, I think that they're the group part. So yeah, there's a few different ways to group. What I did here was group the unshared edges. So this just means perimeters or borders. And then I use this bounding box intersected with to basically say only the existing group members that are also inside of this box. And Steve shared another handy bit of Vex that you can do. So if we just copy this, paste it in there, and what we can do is use this to define the group membership. So if I say group underscore pin, this is how you can define group membership within Vex. And then we can click our script, the macro there, to assign parameters. So this is comparing the length, the distance from the origin of the position, and maybe it doesn't like these characters. All right. So we got it. And then under output selection here, if you type in your group, then it will actually highlight in the viewport your group membership. So for more technical or advanced way of grouping, this is pretty cool. So if we just take our radii, copy that, and put it in. Right now we don't get any. You could say if it's less than or equal to, and it should get it. It's kind of dangerous though sometimes, like to do equals when you're comparing like floating point numbers. So what I'd recommend is taking this and like multiplying it by 1.01. You're just making it slightly larger, if that makes sense. So that's another way. Boom, boom. These are both two kind of valid ways of grouping things. Just depends how you want to work. There was another thing I was trying to do as well, like if you just make a circle, you can transfer groups that way. So we have both these methods. Should give you the same results. But procedural groups are nice. So procedural groups, you can change the topology, can redefine rows and columns if we want more or less divisions, and we don't have to worry about like hand selecting those groups, which is really cool. So when you're doing this motion design stuff, like the subdivisions or the quality of your mesh, that's going to have a lot of effects on the actual simulation, the performance. So being able to quickly experiment without having to like redo tedious point selections is really cool. Coffee mug with the Vex ready. It's like emergency. It's like a break glass in case of Vex error. You have your little espresso that you smash an espresso button in case you get an error in with Vex. So yeah, this is for sure one way to go about things that's pretty cool. And then there's different cloth settings that we can dial in or play around with if we want. So like wind, drag, and stuff like that, I would think is one thing that's definitely making this result mine's much more chaotic. Another thing is with this path that I've set up here. These twists, we could just turn them off for a second. So if we just want a similar, more gentle kind of like ring or something like that, we can get rid of the twists. Someday tricks to get procedural groups. I could try. I try to share little tricks as I go. It's hard for me to always remember and like compile them in one place, but there is tons of little nice tricks with like grouping that always come in handy. So that's pretty cool. Looks a little bit more cleaner or simpler now. Maybe let's just go in with like couple twists, maybe 3 could be nice. I'm also going to do this resample after the operations here. And I think it was because I wasn't setting this to subdivision. It was like linearly making these like things jagged. So I just reduced the number of spins. I think should be a better balance of like chaotic, simpler, and interesting. That's pretty cool. Another thing to keep an eye on is like the thickness of your cloth. So if you check visualize thickness, maybe you want your cloths to be thicker. So this is just going to affect like how closely they can stack or come up against each other. So if you want them to get like really close without touching, you can change it. Right now we're allowing some spacing. So this depends how you're shading it. If you want to like extrude it afterwards or add some more interesting shaders, you could do that. Just for visualization purposes right now, I'm gonna press the D button and should be able to, oof. I think I have a viewport error. Usually I turn off these tint back faces just so things look a little bit cleaner or whatever. Because if you just have a one-sided geometry, sometimes you don't want it to turn blue or whatever like that. I might be having an error on my side. That should work if you press D and you can disable like tint back faces. You could also do a poly extrude. This is going to make things a little bit slower. If we just add a little bit of spacing here, we'll add the back. So this is what I was talking about with your collisions. Collision thickness. If you know you're going to be extruding stuff afterwards, you might want to add in that edge length scale when you initialize your cloth settings. Another thing you can do sometimes at school is like subdivide. This will give you a little bit of like a rounded, smoother rounded edges and stuff. You can see some cool interaction there. It's a lot slower to happen. Floppy CDs is the original floppy disk. So if I middle mouse button on this, I could see the subdivision node here. It's taking like 2 seconds to cook. And this one's taking like 79 milliseconds or something. Sometimes what I'll do is just go up here to preview stuff or to visualize. So you could work, and then whenever you're going to render, you would move the display flag here. You can also hold the T key down, T, and put it there if you want to. Now whenever I render it, we'll cook this more like expensive node, 2 seconds, but for inspection of playback and stuff like that, we'll just use the quicker method. Yeah, this does look like Apple. It's like the mango candies, right? These, where did it go? These things could do something like that as well. Could be pretty cool. So that's something pretty fun to play around with. Calls for a mango shader. This could be cool. I'm running low on time. We'll see how far we get. Like some pretty far into the recording already. Yeah, if you consider this another checkpoint. Go up a version, and you guys can grab the file there if you want to continue to play around with it. If you want to dial in cloth settings, There's the stiffnesses to play around with again, and as well as density. So I find it's a little bit like counterintuitive maybe, but if you increase that density, you'll get a lighter weight cloth, closer to like tissue paper, maybe silk or something like that. So it will be a lot easier to kind of like wrinkle and more detailed, if that makes sense. If you reduce the density, the default, let's go back to the default. This is where we were. Less wrinkles, it's like a slightly stronger cloth. If you reduce the density, it will get even stronger, or more like a rubber or something like that. So this stuff here, not super detailed, like in terms of the deformations. So you could even go lower with your density. Isn't density kilograms? It might be Royal Ontario Museum. I remember you enjoy your scientific settings. I don't know how to explain it from a physics or technical or engineering standpoint. I just know it from experimenting with it myself. Maybe I haven't ever really even looked into this file myself. You could look at how they set up their they have their different material standards here as well that are like different qualities of wrinkling. I just know it from playing around with this myself. You could also dial in bend stiffness. This is another way to control it. Like if you really reduce the bend stiffness, you should start to see more detailed wrinkling and flexibility within the cloth. I usually just will whack this up and down as like a quick way, especially if I'm doing like motion design that isn't grounded in reality. It's possible this is like a more scientific method, if ignoring the density and just changing the stiffness of the bend. So higher bend stiffness, you're getting closer to rubber. That might be a more sensible way to think about things. But there's many different ways to adjust things. Should we tweak stretch and bend settings before playing with the density? Like I was saying, I think it depends on the material you're going for. If you're doing like a character that's wearing a raincoat that's going to be used several times in like a film or something, you might want to spend a lot of time dialing in like damping, stiffness of bend, and stretch. You could even like layer different layers of constraints, like make a few different combinations. But if you're just doing this kind of abstract stuff, sometimes I'll just go with the density as like a quick way to globally change stuff, if that makes sense. All right, let's go back down here. Poly extrudes gives me a few artifacts of points going crazy. Yeah, so the poly extrude, sometimes it can get out of hand. Is a quick way to fix that if you change your extrusion mode to point normal. That can fix those issues sometimes. Let me know. This primitive edge normal, it seems like it's a little less stable. So if you just go to point normal, I've had that happen before where you get like weird points that shoot off in crazy directions. Is there a way to cache to RAM the poly extrude without writing to disk? I don't do it too often, but if you just use the cache node, this is a quick way to cache any results of your SOP network, like a DOP solver. So if I just let that play a little bit, the blue bar should fill up as well. It's hard to see because it's also happening with the Vellum. Like two different things are caching to RAM. But you can use this cache node if you want to cache any SOP results as well. I don't use it too much, but it's definitely a nice one. So the reason I don't use it is because I'll usually just do flipbooks instead. Because then you don't have to worry about like the OpenGL update slowing you down or things like that. But yeah, the cache node is always available. We'll just do a few more tweaks here with the circle. If we want to update like number of spokes, number of circles around our circle, we can do that pretty easily. Let's get our things going. So yeah, maybe the amount of how closely or tightly you pack these things, you could get interesting results that way. So that's definitely one parameter or one setting you want to play around with. And then of course, with the cloth results here, this is always going to be pretty determined by the divisions. So if you expect to get even like higher frequency detail or smaller deformations, you'll need to increase your resolution of the circles. You always sometimes want to keep an eye, like if you middle mouse button, how much geometry or how many faces you're going to be simulating. So you always need to be careful. Like it's easy to get out of hand if you make a lot of divisions with high resolution circles or whatever. But we should still be pretty good. The Vellum solver is a really nice solver inside of Houdini. It lets you simulate a ton of geometry with pretty fast speed or efficiency. We can add the main torus in as well. How do you solve when the collider stick to the Vellum geo? My fix to that was I did a keyframe on my path. So you just make sure it doesn't start already penetrating with it. And that's the best way to fix it. Anything that's already penetrating when you start your simulation, it will think like it belongs inside of that geometry, if that makes sense. There's other ways you could do it, but making sure your collider is not moving too fast, that might help. Definitely you could add substeps or things if your collider is moving too fast, but I've usually found, like, even if you make it a lot slower, let's just go back here. So this is where I'm animating, can make it slower. But I've usually found that even if you do make it slower, like the Vellum solver, I think it always tries to attach initially penetrating geometry to the collider, if that makes sense. There's some attributes and things like that you can add to disable collisions for a little bit. But yeah, I always think that if you can avoid initial penetration, that will make sense. So like for this animation, it's hard. I can't really scrub or anything like that, but it looks like even on the first frame, they've started with the, let's see if I can, so even on the first frame, you can see they've already like deformed it or pushed it in a little bit. You would do that with like a soft transform or things like that if you wanted to. All right. So I'm just gonna adjust some things here. Let's get rid of this, move this. Gonna go through and quickly name some stuff. Spiral path, connect points, smooth, upres, open, face. This is fine how it is. Animate, point, long, path. That should be good. Everything else should be pretty clear to understand. And then you could do a merge. So instead of merging that, let's grab the torus. Let's grab the results there. And we're gonna wanna grab the, I guess with the collider we have a few options. If you want to, you could pull it from here. This subdivide is going to get a little slow. So I think I've added more divisions to the circles. If we want to maybe just go back to one recursion, or one iteration is pretty cool. And so 2.5 seconds, but it should be okay. So that should be good. If you guys have any questions, feel free to put them in. Just wrap things up now. There's one more idea I had with the groups. I'm going to see if it works. Let's see if I grab this main torus, set a point group, and let's try the group transfer again. So let's try this. I'm going to transfer just that new group number 3. All right, so it looks like everything is inside of group number 3. You should be able to pull back on this distance. So these are the purple. Let me just get rid of the other group for a second. Let's go into the wireframe. So it looks like this could be a even more like straightforward way of grouping our geometry. We have a nice added control here where we can even, if we want to pin more points, we can do that, which could be cool. So let's just rename this to pin. And then this group transfer here, we'll rename that as well. So this, again, is another option of, could be even more straightforward or simpler way to think about it. Is polyextrude and subdivide the same as doing a Vellum post-process? It might be. I think I talked about this a little bit last stream. The Vellum post-process there's not too much going on inside of it. Usually I will break that process out and just recreate it because it's pretty simple. One of the main reasons is just to keep an eye on like how long things are taking and stuff like that. So for example, when you have these big HDAs, you can tell because it has the lock or there's a lot of stuff going on inside of it. It's a little bit harder to like pinpoint how long each step is taking. Like here I can see it's taking 2.5 seconds. It doesn't look like there's an option here to subdivide, or it does. I don't know what order this is happening in, like one could be happening before the other. So I generally try to stay away from like that type of obfuscation, if possible. If you double click, you could go inside and look for the subdivision node. So it looks like here the subdivision is happening before, right here it looks like, before the extrusion. So in this case, this isn't what I want to happen. Let me get rid of some of this stuff to explain. So if you subdivide and then extrude, the extrusion will take longer, but you also won't get some like smoothing of the borders. So I'm very purposefully here extruding and then subdividing to get a little nice like rounding on the edges. In this situation, the subdivision is happening and then the extrusion is happening. So it's a little, but it depends. If you want to keep things really simple, for sure you can use this. And there's also other things you can do. If you wanted to add the blur, you could even accentuate this rounding of the edges even more, getting back into the mango gummy territory. So that's generally why I'll recreate the Vellum post processes, because I now have a lot more control over the order of operations. So it does have a lot of effect on the result, which operation is performed. No floor gang. You talking about a floor in the Vellum solver? Suggest perhaps a color transfer from the circle to the discs. That way you can have a trail of color when the ball passes through them. Kind of clean up the masking of future effects. Yeah, the color transfer is really nice. You can even do it inside of like a SOP solver if you wanted some fading action and stuff like that to happen. Can be pretty nice. How do you make the Vellum simulation have more energy conservation so that it moves for longer? That was something I set initially, I think in the other simulation maybe. So like reducing this wind's drag, this will let things reverberate for longer. You can experiment with it yourself. But this has like a damping effect on things. And then also as well on the initial cloth settings, these damping ratios, I believe, this should allow stuff to preserve its energy for longer as it shifts around. So maybe let's just dial back these settings a little bit. Cravings for those gummy rings. I've never been a big fan of them. I'd eat one or two of them. We get into weird territory when there's like too much gummy. You guys have ever seen the Krabby? These things. It's like too much of that gummy material. It just gets, these never tasted good. It looks like maybe my stuff got out of hand here with my like wind drag. Then maybe I set that too low. I think also my, I want to go back to my faster speed there. Might be that my pin, I was missing some of my groups when I transfer this pin over. Just increase that radius. So that's one way to handle things. Reducing the bend stiffness, reducing the damping ratio. Should allow that stuff to reverberate and reflect off each other and stuff for longer. You can see it's kind of getting out of hand now because it's like never gonna settle down. So it's definitely like a balancing point or a process or whatever to do that. This is pretty cool. It's more like a silk or something like that at this point. Yeah, and then if we wanted to do like a color transfer stuff, you just do attribute transfer. Let's just see what happens real quickly. I'm going to do a weird trick here. So I want this sphere to be like a rainbow. So if you do color this by bounding box, this will just do the local bounding box as the rainbow color. Sometimes what I'll do is like a bound of the entire path. So if I merge both of these ahead of time, then this, so I'm also going to do a time shift to just like freeze or retrieve a static frame from there. So now when we merge stuff, we have like 86 primitives, or it's kind of out of control. You can do is just group ahead of time. Let's just say this is the B box. And then after the coloring operation, can remove or just delete the B box. And then we get a nice like gradient or changing color over time. You guys see the difference? If we don't throw in that bounding box, spatially this doesn't really get too interesting. But now we get a weird techno rave colors. So if we do attribute transfer, can do it like spatially, like a fade. It's pretty cool. It's all instantaneous though, so it's not as interesting. If you want to do some like time-based effects, you can use this solver to keep stuff a little bit more interesting. So we'll just put it inside of here. So this is the previous frame. This is the moving sphere in this input, and then this is the updated animation. So I think if I just copy from an attribute, yeah, I'll do another file share in a moment. We do another attribute copy. We'll just use this to update the animated position. This is transferring over the color. trying to think here. All right. So before we start this, we just want to initialize the color to white. That's why we weren't getting a blended color before, because it wasn't initialized. And maybe we'll just play this and see what happens. So this is definitely updating the color. If we wanted to start fading it back off after a certain amount of time, I think we can do, just get a white color here and do this sequence blend. Just the color. So I'm going 10% towards white every single frame. You can turn that off. I think that should start to eliminate that. That could be cool. Might be a little too abrupt. So this will say blend back to white. Do 0, 5. This is update animated position. Transfer color from sphere. White. All right. So we'll just keep building this out a little bit. Transfer, fade, color. And just going to update this merge. So we'll get our colored sphere that way. You could get an update to this file. I'm going to get the changes or anything like that. And then looks like we also need a color on the torus. It's like defaulting to black. All right. We'll do a flip book. Would you recommend to simulate wheat? Wheat and barley, wheat or grass, or even leaves on trees with vellum? It depends a lot on how much time you have and like detail you want on the simulation. Vellum works very nicely for grass or possibly wheat, because you can use it with the hair gen tools or fur gen tools. Can open another Houdini while this is flip booking. And I'm also just going to do like a RV session of the frames that finished so far. So I might want to dial in these settings of like the fade is maybe still a little too quick. It's up to you, but I think it'd be cool if it stayed around for like a semicircle or something like that. But it's looking pretty cool so far. So there's tutorials of this you could find around for sure, but running out of time, so this will probably be the last thing we talk about. If you do, just oof. Let's get this window size sorted out. All right. Boom. If you do a grid like this, and you could do hair generating. This is like, if you want to set up maybe the guide, the initial like grass on your field. This is grass, you want it to be longer, and then if you want a quicker simulation, you don't want as much of them. You can do that. And with individual curves like this, it's nice. You can do group by range. And then this is a really easy way to get like the base points of each curve. So if I just do points, connectivity, and affect disconnected geometry separately. This is basically saying like operate on each curve independently. And then if you just set your start range to 1 and invert the range, then you get the base points. You do the other way, like that. You just get the tips, but this disconnected geometry is super important. This is saying for each connected piece of geometry, get the last point or the first point. All right. And then again, we can do a vellum hair. Maybe hair is good for this one. And again, we just want to pin this thing. Like we're flip booking out in this example. Looks like it has a couple more frames to go. We can pin the grouped points there. And pin. And do a Vellum solver. Probably don't need too much gravity. Turn it off. And then I'm just going to add the wind force inside. You can do pop wind again, just a point-based force with this noise. So there's certain things you might want to change if we're saying this is grass instead of like gnarly wires. Again, this bend stiffness is most important. Let's try a good range here. And then I'm going to try to dial in the wind, like a bigger size. And a higher amplitude. And then make the pulse length longer. So the longer pulse length will make it update more slowly. So this is like how quickly the wind is going to evolve or change. So I don't know, as an example, this is like an interesting grass or wheat field. And then what you can do with vellum and stuff like that that's really cool is the under, where did it go? I've lost it. Should be. I think it's hair generate. Is this the same one? I was being foolish. Okay. So the grid is going to be like the skin, and I think this would be like our guides. Doesn't like that. Ooh, it crashed. Bum bum bum. All right. Ooh, didn't like that. Is it gone forever? It's okay. I think I still should be able to find something close to where we were. All right. Oof. Was it like a point deform? It's definitely one of the hair things. I think I just haven't connected it properly. There was a example I had. I'll try to grab it quickly. Did it work? So empty file. Let me look in the crash directory. It isn't there. I might have been working too fast, but I didn't save it. So many, it's too many files. All right. I think it should be one of them. I might have to do it a different day, but I could find I won't be as close to the wind example, but I think I could find it. There's a Vellum thing that I did. I think it was maybe KinFX. All right. So this is upresing stuff using the hair gen. Here it is. Nice. All right. So yeah, this is what I was trying to do, but the idea is you do the Vellum simulation, and then you can connect the hair gen. So you have your base curves, and then you have the skin, what it was generated on. And then you use this hair gen to upres. So it's basically like you simulate the guides, and then you propagate a high resolution result on top of that. So I was using kin effects here to do like a wave animation, and then upresing it, and using the chops to do like a jiggle. I don't know why it crashed on me. I think I was doing like, my density was too high, or some setting was too high, and the Houdini thing freaked out a little bit. But that's pretty cool. So with the hair stuff, you also can do like clumping. I think you can do it like this. I might be messing it up a little bit, but you can. This was meant for like fur with clumps and stuff like that. So you have a lot of control, even post-processing, like a Vellum simulation. You can also do other things with the hair. I thought that there was a section for it in here. It might be under hair. There it is. Yeah, so you can do frizz. You want to add some noise, I think, to everything. It's somewhat possible to, I think I might be frizzing this in the wrong place. It's somewhat possible to instance geometry on the curves. The only problem is with instancing, you can't like deform an instance. You could only reorient it, so it'd be like rigid geometry doing that. Went to get some ice cream. Nice freaky, it's like the alien grassland. So yeah, I was messing around with this clumping stuff or whatever. I think that there's also some noises, or like adding some of this stuff in, you can get it looking a little bit more natural. So it depends how you want to render this. Like I wouldn't necessarily try to instance, but you could do a guide, or like a deform, point deform, if you had a field of wheat geometry. Another thing you could do is like this, you might want to do on your lower resolution stuff. If you were to sweep these with cards, ribbon, you could assign textures to this. So the UVs, the sweep node can give you really nice looking UVs automatically. Let's take a look at the settings I have. For this case, I might want to turn off length weighted. And if we grab a file here, yeah, you could use a texture atlas or different things like that. It depends. You're getting closer into like working in a real-time situation. So yeah, I don't know. I have some different things here. Grass. So this would be like the alpha channel, and I don't know, making it bigger or something like that. So that would be like your opacity. You want some different variations and stuff to make it look interesting. That's cool. With this sweep, this will respect the local like attributes. So again, if you did like orient along curve, did like rotations or twists, we should be able to. I think I need to go here. Maybe I need to go with this one. You could set like unique orients or stuff like that, or even do like weird twists to your grass. This is kind of popping or whatever because of it's like based off of the kin effects attributes and things like that. But yeah, that's probably going to be it for today. So hopefully you guys liked. Let me get the thing. Hope you guys liked the setup. We'll be adding this to the VOD or to the description. You guys feel free to play around with this and see what kind of cool results you can get. I think the color idea is pretty cool. Should really play around with like saturation and things like that. Get interesting results. Maybe it's cooler in that direction. The wheat scene, I'm not going to make it available. I'll maybe spend some time later on like properly doing it. It's a bit messy right now, so I might try to like update the orientations and get that hair gen working without it crashing or anything like that. So yeah, unfortunately, I'm not gonna. I don't want to share too much sloppiness. But yeah, this is the main result. We're going to find all the previous stream hip files. Yeah, there was the members only page is a little bit different. It's not necessarily the stream content. The members only section is a mirror of the bonus or Patreon content, which is like separate from the stream things. Right now, the best place to go for the stream files is this section of the Discord. Going forward, what I'm planning to do is just put the links directly in the YouTube comments or the YouTube description like this, so you can get the files directly there. But for the previous streams or in the past, what I was doing was adding them in here just as links when I was posting. So you have to go up quite a bit. So I posted a link to the HIP file or to a Google Drive. It was a bit less organized, and it got a bit out of hand or whatever, but unfortunately for previous ones, this is the method I was doing. Getting back to the Bitcoin trading, yes, isn't it time to sell? What the hell is going on here? Who knows what's going to happen? All right. Yeah, that's going to be it for today. Hope you guys have a good rest of your day. Take it easy.